Hello and welcome. You're with DD India, and this is our weekly show on all things science and tech, innovation and entrepreneurship, India Ideas. I'm Gautam Roy. Cyber attacks have become the bane of both government bodies and private organizations. A recent report said India saw ransomware attacks more than double in the first half of 2023 compared to 2022. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. Mapping India's cyber threat landscape has now become essential to proactively tackle hacking and other cyber attacks. And that is our showcase today. Phishing, ransomware, malware, denial of service attack, Trojans are just a few among the over 20 kinds of cyber attacks being carried out at a blitz around the world and in India. Both governments and companies are realizing that it's no longer enough to be able to fend them off or fight them once they've struck. These crippling threats have to be mapped, data studied in depth and landscaped to preempt them proactively. According to Cypherma's Changing Threat Landscape report, the Indian government and private entities are both under an alarmingly increasing number of cyber attacks from state and non-state actors over wide geographies in Asia alone, and strategies need to be put in place to tackle them. We're talking about it all today with Saurabh Lal, President Cypherma, which calls itself an external threat landscape management platform, which has produced the Threat Landscape Report and shared it exclusively with DD India. Pankit Desai, co-founder and CEO Secure Tech, which says it's an end-to-end simplified cybersecurity platform which has products designed on AI platforms which are capable of reacting to threats in real time. And we also have Lieutenant General Rajesh Pant with us, India's former National Cybersecurity Coordinator in the Prime Minister's office. Welcome to you all. Now, Saurabh, congratulations for producing this comprehensive report. Could you boil it down for us in about 2 minutes to help us understand India's cyber threat landscape?
Namaskar. Thank you for having me in this forum, and greetings to everybody who's seeing this, and greetings to my fellow panelists. Let's quickly understand, right, in today's scenario, from cyber warfare, nobody is really spared. Everybody is interested in data because data is the new currency. How do you get the data? You start by attacking CIIs or Internet of Things, because anything and everything which is connected to Internet and devices can do lots of great activities when you are connected via Internet to that particular device. Represents important data that can be taken away. Now, you also have considerations wherein cyber criminals are trying to fuel, trying to get financial outcomes, because as you can see, the financial or the cyber crime economy has never gone down. This has led to disruptions in supply chain. We have seen a lot. And specifically for the India geography, right, we have a very heavy and a very robust ecosystem in terms of SMEs. And gone are the days when people used to think that, the big fours or the big six or the big organizations are the only ones which will be really impacted. Well, the SMEs are not spared either. And what is the biggest menace, as you had very briefly pointed out? Well, ransomware. And the alarming fact is what we have seen over the past few years is these ransomware groups, right, they are collaborating much more than cyber defenders like you and I are, which means even the cyber criminals are collaborating. If a group goes ahead and attacks a particular organization and the data is exfiltrated, well, that data is out there to launch or seed the next set of attacks out there. So from an evolving threat landscape, right, what we have noticed is cyber crimes are now focusing more on shifting from the cyber world to the kinetic world, which means an impact to an actual human's life. It could mean impact or executing, let's say, material loss of human life from hospitals. It could be, well, impacting certain critical transportation network that we have seen out there. Obviously, a huge factor around this is the uptick in the state-sponsored attacks. You remember, I was just watching the program just before our session here around Global South. Right. How India is really well at the forefront in trying to lead G20. the Global South initiatives. We just had a very successful Chandrayaan-3. We are going to launch the the Sun mission, and very soon. So this puts India at a very pivotal place, and not everybody might be happy about it. And gone are the days when missiles or bullets are fired. It is now the age of cyber warfare, wherein sitting on my keyboard, I can probably do more harm than somebody out there on the field trying to do it. And ransomware is one execution around it. What we are also starting to see, and we have highlighted, is deepfake. This is Saurabh Lal speaking. There might be other videos out there on the internet mimicking Saurabh Lal, and you might think that that is the real Saurabh Lal from Cypherma speaking. So that's an example of deepfake, which we are worried, and we can see the trends that it is on par to taking over from phishing. Now, very quickly and very briefly, in the next 30 minutes, I want to break it down at a nation level, at an organizational level, and at individuals like you and me in the society. Of course, at a national level, as I explained to you, it's all your geopolitical considerations, right? India has advancements of technologies, a very vibrant set of startup ecosystem, SME, SMB ecosystem. We have a very young population, which is leading to the fact that you are seeing increasingly sophistication of cyber attacks, adoption of cloud. You are seeing vulnerabilities in cloud infrastructure. Let's say growth of IoT devices at times is being done at the expense of security, and obviously social engineering threats, because it's about the society that everybody is interested in trying to manipulate. At an organizational level, if you break it down, it's around ransomwares, cyber criminals being very active in attacking the manufacturing, the automobile, the BFSI. You have spammers who are actively seeking information and trying to mine information, as well as impacting supply chain, because, hey, India is the heart of software supply chain. As we were talking about in the previous program, that while the technology is in the West, now the technology and the human resources are all there in the South, or the global South, which India is leading into. And then when you break it down at an individual level, you see phishings, you see smishing, you see wishing, you see business compromise emails.
Yes, it is really expansive. Thanks for a comprehensive overview of the report, Saurabh. Pankit, if I could come to you, with such an expansive threat landscape which keeps morphing, how challenging is it to produce tools for companies like yours and Saurabh's to counter cyber criminals?
So you got to be a step ahead, right? So the same set of technologies that make the attackers become much more smarter. Saurabh spoke about extensive use of AI in terms of identification or going after naive citizens and so on and so forth. The same set of tools are also available to us to be able to figure out how we will be able to build a set of products that reduce the human dependence in detection. So till now, a lot of tools that came in the market either had a set of predefined rules that were configured by humans and had to be constantly updated as you go along, to now where you use ML to be able to create behaviors and patterns and kind of build on top of it. So extensive use of AI ML in the build of the tools. Second, extensive ingestion of data that is generated all across the globe. So there's a good part here is that the good guys here do collaborate quite often. So there are threat data, threat details, threat feeds available that you can have access to. You can bring that data in from across the world, from across different sectors, geographies, and then use that data to be able to define for you and your set of products what's happening on the global market. And the last part is that while tools are great, there is an element of people and process that also has to step in, because you're only as good as your weakest link. So you might have the best products in the world that you've implemented, but if your people angle in terms of the ability for your employees or whoever is part of your value chain to do the right set of activities, like you get an email and you end up clicking on it and you should not be clicking on it, and training people towards that, and a set of good processes, this three in my mind gives you the adequate coverage to at least make life difficult for the attacker to not come after you, but go after someone else who has not done that job adequately well for themselves.
All right. Now, General Pant, as India's former National Cybersecurity Coordinator, does this report surprise you, Or is it something the government is well aware of and prepared to tackle, because a lot of the targets of cyber attacks are government departments, public sector units, and the other institutions as well?
Thank you, Gautam, and good evening to all viewers of DD India.
Thank you.
Let me also compliment Saurabh and Pankit for their presentations, very comprehensive, timely, and relevant reports. It is not a surprise, I can assure you, to the people who matter in the government of India, because we are aware that India is one of the most cyber-attacked nations in the world. And the reasons are many. One of the main reasons is our sheer scale and size. With 800 million internet users, 1.28 billion mobile phones, naturally the number of attacks will be more, and we will rise in the ladder of the hierarchy. I can tell you the official figures of CERT India. CERT is the Computer Emergency Response Team. 2017, only 50,000 incidents were reported. Last year, 14 lakhs incidents were reported. In the Indian Cybercrime Coordination Center, when we started 2 years back, it was just a few hundred cases that were reported. Yesterday, when I checked, it was 5,500 daily reported cases. So there's no doubt that the number of attacks have increased. And the reasons are, as Saurabh also mentioned, that it has to be a whole of nation approach. The individual, the businesses, the government all have to contribute towards providing national security in cyberspace. And the reason is that the attack starts with one individual getting compromised. So one phishing mail or all the other aspects that he mentioned, smishing, vishing, etc. From that one individual, he spreads the malware in a lateral manner across the organization. Then he escalates the privileges, tries to get admin rights, and then he's sitting there to do some major crime aspect. So ransomware is a service that was mentioned. Today you have access brokers who are already sitting inside companies.
Yes.
And the government has taken a number of steps. We've got a computer emergency response team. The National Critical Information Infrastructure Protection Center has been created. The Indian Cybercrime Coordination Center has been created. We have a very good cyber crisis management plan. We've taken steps, especially in the power and the telecom sector. But yes, I agree, a lot more needs to be done on the education and awareness front. Let me end by saying that there are three hard truths in cyberspace. One, that the more we depend on softwareization, vulnerabilities will continue to exist. Two, if vulnerabilities continue, then attacks will continue to take place. And three, the attribution of these attacks will be as difficult as what it is today. So the answer lies in creating resilience. That means we accept the fact that attacks will continue. Now, how do you ensure business continuity in that environment? And that is what we have the plans for.
All right.
Thank you, Gautam.
Thank you for that overview in terms of how we are prepared to defend ourselves. Now, Saurabh, the report also points to several factors which have increased cybersecurity risks, and these range from how employees conduct themselves both online and offline to cloud. Are India's companies doing enough to safeguard their businesses and their clients or consumers?
See, I'll start by again reiterating what General Saab just mentioned, right? There are only two stages in cybersecurity. Either you are hacked and you know, or you are hacked and you don't know. And the whole country level, organizational level, and individual level, as I was explaining, they're all interrelated. So if you plan for the second state that, yes, we are hacked and we don't know, and we try to address that, that is what the organizations really need to look out for. Are we doing enough? Well, it was good enough when we look at what was the status yesterday, but the cyber criminals and the cyber crime is always evolving. And it needs to start from a cultural shift, starting from an employee that, hey, the cybersecurity responsibility starts with me. But then organizations are doing enough, but they need to do far more in terms of awareness, employee training, trying to focus on new initiatives, right? Digitization and cloud is a very a common initiative in many organizations, but at many times it's at an expense of security, your third-party ecosystem, your fourth-party ecosystem, your data protection. So I feel there is room for organizations to do a lot more. Yes, we are doing, and the organizations are doing enough, but please remember the external threat landscape and the cyber criminal scenario and the cyber crime economy is evolving, and we need to keep at pace with that.
Okay. Now, Pankit, the recently enacted Digital Personal Data Protection Act provides some protection to people, putting the onus of securing their data on companies. Now, how effective do you think would this measure prove to be in ensuring companies take cybersecurity seriously?
Great question. So what had happened in India is that there were a few sectors that were under some form of a regulatory coverage. So if you are a bank, then there is Reserve Bank of India that comes out with a series of guidelines that allows these companies to create a much resilient security framework. If you are a mutual fund or a stock exchange, then SEBI does something for you. If you're an insurance company, then IRDA. If you're telecom, then TRAI. But a large part of the remaining ecosystem, whether the services industry or the hospitality or healthcare or manufacturing or pharma or e-commerce, none of them had any framework whatsoever to safeguard the citizen data, the consumer data, because there was no regulatory framework being asked for it. And unfortunately, in a country like India, uh, I shouldn't be saying it, but unless there is a stick, there is no activity. So there has to be a stick. And for whatever is worth, DPDP is one of the best sticks that is available that will push companies to not only look at their practices around data, but also be answerable to an individual. So today, if let's say I'm on an e-commerce platform and my data gets leaked, there till before DPDP, there was no norm that would have let the e-commerce company inform me that I have been impacted. So my credentials were leaked, my user ID was leaked, my credit card information was leaked. I mean, there was no stick. I have not gotten a single email in the past 4 years, and I keep reading about this, so many of data leaks with e-com company. I haven't received a single email saying that your data has been leaked. I find it to a dark net, and because we are on the security side of the house, I come to know, but the rest of the folks don't. So to me, beyond everything else that DPDP will do in terms of guaranteeing security and privacy of data and ability for people to forget and whatever else that comes with it, I'm hoping and I'm quite happy about the fact that there will be something that will push companies to ensure that their security postures are up to date and they have done enough to secure the data.
Now, General Pant, this punitive aspect, of course, stands out where DPDP is concerned, the Digital Personal Data Protection Act. But I'm sure the government has built in other safeguards into the act as well. What is the government's perspective on ensuring that it is as effective as, as an introductory law, really, to data protection in the country?
Yeah, Gautam, and just to take off from where Pankit left, we've been waiting for this law since 2017 onwards, since the Puttaswamy case took place, and under Article 21 of the Constitution, privacy was declared as a fundamental right. And then we had this Justice Sri Krishna Committee, and Minister Meenakshi Lekhi did this excellent job in the JPC. Then, of course, the Chris Gopalakrishnan Committee, and then a fresh draft was made, and finally, 11th August this year, I think, is a historic day in the digital journey of India when this act has come. Let me just share with you, a few years back, Facebook was fined $5 billion for leaking the data of 81 million Americans to Cambridge Analytica, and they paid. A few days back, same thing happened to Meta, again, 5 billion. And all this money is going into the Federal Reserve of the US. In our case, it will come to the Consolidated Fund of India. So the government has been losing money. Individuals have been losing money. You are aware of the fines that are there, that in case that particular company has not followed the reasonably good cybersecurity measures, then they can be fined up to 250 crores. So suddenly now, the whole industry has woken up. They have to get what is called the data protection officer. The CISO is now under a lot of pressure. They have to get the compliances right. So this the particular act, now the bill part is gone. It's become an act now. Now you have to focus on the compliance. And especially at the national level, we are all so happy that this bill has come before the G20 summit meeting, because it is now projecting India as a very responsible digital nation.
Okay.
Sometimes when we go and take part in international discussions, there are the adequacy clauses, that have you got some rail guards, etc. So this bill has now given us that particular measure, and it's an excellent time. At least I hope this data protection board is formed at the earliest, and we constitute and start examining this aspect.
Yes, it'll be good to see it in action now. Saurabh, crisp response, because we're running out of time. Generative AI finds its way into every conversation these days. Now, why should cybersecurity be any different? So the question is it a boon or a bane for cybersecurity like it is for many other fields?
I think as Pankaj mentioned and also General Saab touched base on this, it's both a boon and a bane. It's boon for me as a cyber defender because I can fasten my responses around an incident. I can have it automated. I can enhance my analytics or probably help with the automated phishing detection, malware analysis. But when you swap this around for an adversary, they can start by executing advanced attacks. They can automate their cyber attacks. If you have biases included in some of the models, those biases is any models built on top of it will continue to have that bias. Or if you have vulnerabilities around some of these, by the time you'll realize it's way too late. And at the end of it, this can become a reason for escalating cyber warfare. So it's a double-edged sword for defenders like us. Absolutely a boon. But then there are other aspects to it which need to be looked into carefully.
Got it. Now, Pankit, going back to the threat landscape report, don't reports like these run the risk of overwhelming prospective clients as well in terms of how will they get business value out of it? Would customization be a solution? And that is happening as we speak as well?
So, security tends to be an overwhelming subject, irrespective. It's unfortunately an industry of too many three-letter acronyms that even I sometimes fail to remember and understand. So forget about a lay individual in the non-security space. The onus is on us, companies like Cypherma, ourselves, and the others, to make it more easy to understand from a business risk perspective. And it's our endeavor always is when we have a conversation with the customer is to see it in the context of what is your overall business risk that you're trying to alleviate for. So for example, let's say if you're a bank, a cyber risk has a very different connotation from as it applies to your business risk versus, let's say you are a small manufacturing company in a remote part of India with just one facility with a lot of manual processes. You have a security risk, but the impact may be slightly more different. So a nuanced understanding of what that risk means to you is a very essential element of how you have a conversation. And I always, when I talk to CEO, I basically tell them that you look at these four aspects as far as security is concerned. If something was to go down, what is the brand impact? Is your brand something that is really significantly high value to you? And I don't want to sound demeaning, but does it really change the meter in a lot of ways if you want to see your name in the newspaper? Second, what is the business continuity? So let's say if there was a major cyber breach, can you still continue to carry on business in some shape and form? Third is, are there any critical assets that you may stand to lose if you was a cyber attack? And last but not the least, what are the compliance impacts? We spoke about DPDP. There is General Shah, when he was there, he had an amazing job of creating a response requirement that if you're a cyber attack, irrespective of the size, you got to respond in 6 hours, or if you're a regulated industry. So what is the compliance element to it? You understand this, and then you decide on your security posture for you.
So this is what really makes things clear to everyone. Now, General Pant, very quickly, what can you tell us about the government cybersecurity initiatives, like the setting up of the Anti-Cyber Terrorism Unit as part of the National Investigation Agency, which probes India's terror attacks, and the National Cyber Security Reference Framework being made public?
Well, Gautam, India was one of the first few countries in the world to come out with the IT Act in 2000 and subsequently the 2008 amendment, the 2022 rules for OTT, and then last year's 28 April directive by CERT-In. So the government has been coming out with these new aspects, including what you mentioned about the Anti-Cyber Terrorism Unit. Now, cyber terrorism is a very peculiar sort of a crime. It involves radicalization, it involves funding, it involves cryptocurrencies, it involves the dark web, there are narcotics involved. So this unit now is going to focus only on these particular aspects. Because otherwise in cybersecurity, the spectrum is too large. It starts from endpoint security, application, cloud, data center, data at rest, data at motion. So in order to focus this as part of the National Investigative Agency, I think it's a very important establishment that has been created. And as far as the other framework that you mentioned is going to come out very soon, there are two things we are looking out for. One, of course, is our National Cybersecurity Strategy, and the second is the National Cyber Reference Framework, which will give a broad view for the Indian enterprise and the individual as to how to create a cybersecurity architecture.
Okay. Looking forward to it coming out as soon as possible. Thank you so much for joining us, all three of you, today to talk about this landscaping of cyber threats. That is very, very much a requirement these days for any business and any institution to function. Thanks a lot for joining us once again. And that was all that we could pack in on India Ideas for tonight. But keep watching DD India for all the latest.